A makeshift memorial in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where 5 members of the military were killed in that shooting rampage. Investigators are uncovering new information about the gunman and what he did in the hours before he launched his terror attack. Senior national correspondent John Roberts is live outside the military recruiting office, which was the first crime scene, with the latest. John.
Good morning to you, Chris. The family of Mohammad Abdulazeez last night expressed condolences to the families of the service members who were slain and the police officer who was wounded, saying the person who perpetrated this horrible crime does not represent the son they knew. But they did give us some possible insight into Abdulazeez's state of mind, saying he had suffered from depression for years. The number of his victims rose to 5 yesterday. Petty Officer Second Class Randall Smith passed away from his wounds. He leaves behind a wife and 3 young children, all under the age of 7. The FBI now following more than 200 leads, dispatching agents to Jordan to determine what Abdulazeez was doing during a lengthy visit there back in 2014. Did he meet with Islamic extremists or terrorist groups? The FBI is also looking into a text message that he wrote to a friend the day before the shooting, an Islamic verse that included the phrase, quote, "Whosoever shows enmity to a friend of mine, I have declared war on him." A lot of talk now about force protection across America. This man in Virginia, where there are open carry laws with weapons, took it upon himself to stand guard outside a recruiting center. But governors in Florida, Texas, and Oklahoma issuing orders to protect or arm recruiters, and legislation to allow that, soon to be introduced by Duncan Hunter in Congress. And that memorial that you mentioned, Chris, outside the recruiting center continues to grow. People coming all day yesterday and again today to plant a flag, say a prayer, and pay their respects to the slain heroes. And we have been watching here outside the recruiting center for the last few minutes, a sort of impromptu street church session that began just a little while ago. The man who's been talking to the crowd saying we need to do more to protect our military and our police officers, asking why the White House has not been lit up in red, white, and blue since Thursday. Chris?
John Roberts reporting from Chattanooga. John, thanks. And we're back now with our Sunday group to discuss all of this. Britt, it keeps happening. Islamic radicals in this country, sometimes, this fellow had gone to the Middle East, but a lot of them haven't even gone to the Middle East, launching these terror attacks, which raises the question, how on earth do we protect ourselves?
And it was in the wake of FBI Director Comey's testimony on Capitol Hill, in which he basically said, you know, we can stop some of these, we can stop a lot of these, but there's no way we can stop all of them. Chris, I think this raises an interesting question. If it turns out, as it may, that this was a terrorist organization inspired or directed, either way, but the question arises, to what degree is the ability of ISIS and other groups to inspire lone wolf terrorists, as this man appears to be, dependent on their military successes in the Middle East? And if it develops, and it may be hard to tell in any short-term time frame, that it's a big deal, that it's a big part of it, that ISIS's seeming march across the Middle East is what's giving rise to this in a major way, then it raises a very important question for this administration and the next one, and that is, does that now mean that in order to be safe here, we have to crush ISIS and perhaps other terrorist organizations?
Julie, this is at least the 9th attack on the U.S. military in this country in the last 6 years, and at recruitment centers, and I didn't realize this, the policy is that the soldiers who are recruiting have to wear their uniforms but cannot carry weapons. How much thought is there inside the administration about changing that policy and allowing soldiers, when they're out on the street, not in military bases here in this country, to protect themselves?
At this point, it doesn't appear as though there is major consideration being given to changing that policy. Officials say that this is a policy that's been in place for many years. It's something that's governed by the Pentagon. They don't feel a need to have a quick reaction and quickly change this. It is certainly possible that we'll see Pentagon officials, move to want to reconsider this. But at this point, I don't think you should expect anything happening imminently.
Pardon?
What's the downside of doing it? I don't get it.
Do you have a sense of that?
I think one of the downsides that they say right now is that they make the policy based on safety of the troops, and at this point they think it's safer for them to not have more weapons around them than to be carrying their weapons in these offices.
I'm not saying that I subscribe to this, is that a lot of these recruitment centers are in shopping malls, and a weapon might go off inadvertently, but you do have to ask the question, when ISIS and other radical groups have specifically urged people in this country to go after military people, have given their names, do you want to leave them defenseless?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a broader question. If the military is fighting ISIS or another group overseas, there's an inherent risk to that. We all know that. If there is going to be a sign that ISIS is trying to have people in the United States recruiting them, pushing them to launch attacks on centers like this, elsewhere, then I think there probably will have to be a broader review of this policy.
The shooter, go ahead.
No, I mean, these are the types of policies that a country that's not serious about defending itself adopts. Right after September 11th, President Bush said that we will not tire, we will not falter, and we will not fail. It is incredibly clear that the Obama administration is tired of American leadership in the world. Their foreign policy is intellectually bankrupt. And as we see with this, and as we see with the Iran deal, their foreign policy has failed.
That is so unfair. I agree we should harden the entrances to these facilities, but this was a surprise attack, hard to protect, impossible to protect everything 100% of the time. They only have to be lucky once. But we have to get into the heads of these kids.
I don't think we should use the word lucky, but effective.
Yeah, but a lot of them get captured because they don't know how to work explosives, etc. And we've actually had a lot of success in foiling a lot of these plots. We should give credit to our police and safety communities. But back to this, we have to get into the heads of these kids. I have an op-ed in today's Post talking about how digital unsavvy we are. We should leverage the talent of Silicon Valley
and all these
kids out there.
I want to pick up on that because
pop up in their faces when they go on computers.
Let me ask you the question, Congresswoman. When you were the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, in fact, you got involved in this and you even proposed legislation that basically said, look, they're recruiting over the internet. We have to find a way to intercept that, to short circuit it.
Right.
It didn't go through the Senate. It didn't pass.
Didn't go through the Senate because some groups distorted what we had tried to do. This was supposed to be a multidisciplinary committee making recommendations to Congress about how to intercept these messages before people engage in violent acts. So
very briefly, give me, and keep it simple for me, how would you do it? How would you stop ISIS on the internet from, putting a message out there that some of these crazies read and are inspired by?
I don't know about you, Chris, and I'm a little old in the tooth to understand how to do this well, but every time I go on the internet and I look at a blog, something pops up, another message from somebody. What we want is when some kid like this, an impressionable kid with a history of depression and a family that was dysfunctional, goes on the internet and he's looking up Dabiq, which is this glossy magazine that ISIS puts out. A pop-up message comes and says, don't believe any of this, the truth is that. And it shouldn't have a State Department Twitter handle on it. It should be from somebody who's credible in his own head. And I think we could dissuade a lot of these kids if they got the fact. Fair and balanced, Chris. Fair and balanced presentations.
Yeah, it's a proposal to treat the symptom, not the actual problem. The problem is that ISIS is growing in influence overseas, and we need to go overseas and we need to crush and humiliate them over there so that they're not attracting. If there's not a base overseas that's attracting these people to it, people going on social media and trying to recruit are just internet trolls. And so the challenge is that we have not gone over the Middle East and defeated ISIS.
The success of ISIS overseas and the fact, quite frankly, that our war against ISIS is not going well at all is a contributing factor in the recruitment.
Of course, look, in social media, it's an even battlefield. They can recruit over there, and our counterintelligence services can also try to disrupt over there. We need to go destroy them overseas.
Let me just, if I might just ask Julie, how would they respond at the White House to that?
I think to some degree they would agree with that. I mean, one of the things that ISIS has been quite good at is not only having actual successes on the battlefield, but taking credit for things that happen in other parts of the region that may be ISIS inspired, but not actually directed by ISIS. So they're taking credit for what's happening across the broader region, and obviously that is having an impact.
Well, if everybody agrees to that, including to some extent the administration, then this question arises. Are we using the full force of American military power and those of willing allies to crush ISIS? I think the answer unmistakably is absolutely not. And as long as that's the case, and as long as it seems to be the case that ISIS's success and survival over there is inspiring these kinds of homegrown terrorists, it seems to me we've got an obvious problem.
All right, we have to take a break here, but when we come back, the political firestorm over an undercover video about trafficking in fetal body parts.